5 sinister school lockdowns revealed, haunted events that cursed innocent lives forever. It started like any other day in Maplewood Elementary. The sun beamed down on the manicured lawns, casting cheerful shadows over children's laughter. But beneath the surface, a sinister current ran through the school. 5 devastating lockdowns that haunted this tight-knit suburb, events so twisted they seemed plucked from a horror film. Whispers of the tragic past edged their way into Sarah's mind as she prepared for another ordinary Tuesday in her role as school nurse, protecting her children Lucy and Ethan. But then, it happened. The sharp, shrill sound of a siren shattered their fragile peace, the loudspeaker crackling. Lockdown. 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 Suddenly, chaos erupted. Faces turned pale, eyes wide with terror. The innocence of childhood was stripped away in those chilling moments. Sarah rushed into action, her instincts as a caregiver igniting within her. She moved quickly, guiding trembling students into the safety of the nurse's office. "It's okay," she reassured them, kneeling down to the level of a sobbing girl. "We're safe here. Just breathe with me." Her voice was steady, but as she offered comfort, a relentless unease wormed through her gut. She recalled the vicious tales told in hushed tones, the haunting incidents from their town's past, each one smeared with loss and darkness. As the minutes dragged on like hours, Sarah's heart raced. She could almost hear the specters of the past hovering, whispering of trusted figures who had turned deadly. Those 5 lockdowns. Something was amiss. With every second, the sinister stories tore through her mind, alluding to a darker side of the community they had always deemed safe. Before she could gather her thoughts, the fire alarms blared mercilessly, each shrill sound stabbing into her heart. They had been trained for this, but nothing prepared her for the gripping fear that spread like wildfire. It was more than just an exercise now, the fact that her children were in the building clawed at her insides. Lucy remained bravely optimistic while Ethan, sensitive and attuned to fear, needed her now more than ever. "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Time slipped away as she navigated the school. Doors creaked open to reveal shadows that seemed to laugh at her mounting dread. Desperation mixed with fury surged through her veins. The familiar hallways now turned treacherous. Then, her heart stopped. Ethan. Where was he? 1,000 terrified thoughts crashed into her. He could be anywhere amid the chaos. With shaking hands, she called out his name, her voice swallowed by the distant echo of the alarm. Every step felt like walking through quicksand. Where was he hiding? The shadows danced around her, whispering secrets she didn't want to hear. Ethan. She cried again, the silence piercing. And then came the chilling whisper, wrapping around her heart like a vice. Ethan. The darkness deepened, the legacy clawing at her heels. What curse tied her family to this nightmare? Sarah stood at the edge of revelation, the past threatening to collide with her present, the specter of doom lurking just a heartbeat away. The air grew thick with tension as Sarah stumbled down the hallway. Shadows elongated, twisting ominously around her, as if they were alive, hungry for her fear. Where could Ethan possibly be? Panic clutched at her throat, squeezing the breath from her chest. Time warped, each second dragging, taunting her with uncertainty. Ethan. She cried again, the sound hauntingly hollow. A part of her sensed she was losing control, crumbling beneath this weight of dread. Her surgical scrubs felt like heavy chains, dragging her deeper into this nightmare. The alarms thrummed like a sinister heartbeat, filling her ears with dread. Its rhythm mimicked her own racing pulse. She reached a classroom door, the one where Lucy had her art class. She knocked, adrenaline surging. Lucy. Silence met her. She turned the knob, only to find it locked tight. A chill raced through her as she pressed her ear against the cold wood, listening intently. Still, not a sound. The world outside the door felt as foreign as another dimension, everything twisted and drenched in fear. Then, the whisper returned, curling around her like a warm blanket that turned icy. "Ethan." It was softer now, more like a plea than a command. She forced herself to breathe, clinging to determination. "I'm coming, buddy." She took off, racing down the corridor, darting past empty classrooms, ghostly figures in the corners of her vision. Each door she passed was a potential hiding place for her son. She needed to find him before the shadows consumed them all, before this day turned into another wretched memory of Maplewood's haunted past. As she rushed through the school, her mind raced with stories: the fifth lockdown, the unexplained whispers, the chilling accidents that had once felt far-fetched. Panic descended, clutching her lungs as the stories knotted her stomach. Was it possible? Did the cursed history of Maplewood have its grip on her family? The idea thrummed dangerously in her mind, the sound of distant giggling pierced her anxious thoughts. Could it be? Was that Ethan? She turned toward the sound. It led her down a winding staircase to the basement. A deep chill unfurled in her belly as she descended, the air growing colder, the light struggling to reach her. The basement loomed ahead, dim and oppressive, an unforgiving black abyss. With each step, the hair on her arms stood tall, and a sense of foreboding twisted in her gut. Shadows swirled in the corners of her vision, stretching their fingers toward her, urging her to turn back. But she wouldn't. It was her job to protect her children, no matter the cost, and then she heard it again: "Ethan." The voice flickered in and out, ethereal, like smoke escaping from a fire, slipping through her fingers as she realized the tone. It wasn't just her son's name. It was calling her. How could that be? Stumbling forward into the darkness, Sarah felt the weight of dread press against her. The basement door creaked open, revealing the vast space ahead. Flickering lights cast grotesque shadows, their movements suspicious, almost too animated. She scanned the room, her heart threatening to break free from her ribs. "Ethan!" She shouted one last time, no longer caring if she drew unwanted attention. Her throat burned with desperation, rendering her speechless, terror flooding her veins like ice. The games of the past were overtaking the present. Then, amidst the oppressive silence, a voice echoed back. It was faint and distorted, making her blood run cold. "Help me," she swallowed hard, the voice unmistakable. It was truly Ethan. As she moved deeper into the basement, the darkness thickening around her, the shadows seemed to close in tighter, whispering curses, their secrets heavy upon her soul. What had she walked into? A brush with the cursed legacy of Maplewood? She was not alone. Something waited. Something hungered in the dark. As she approached the source of that haunting voice, a cold chill wrapped around her heart, clenching like a fist. But one question burned fiercely in her mind: what if the shadows were right? What if she wasn't meant to leave with her son? The darkness thickened as Sarah pushed herself forward, the oppressive weight of fear almost paralyzing. Each step felt heavier, as if the very ground were pulling her down. Shadows danced along the walls, twisting grotesquely, and she fought the urge to scream. "Ethan!" But no answer came. Just silence that hung like a noose around her neck. The voice had been there, she knew it had been, but the basement swallowed that sound now, along with her hope. Something shifted in the gloom, a faint rustling that sent a shiver down her spine. She turned towards the sound, heart racing, and could barely make out a figure huddled in the corner. Her breath quickened. "Ethan!" The figure stayed still, swathed in darkness, but the faintest outline surged with a painful familiarity. Was it him? "Are you okay?" she whispered, desperation twisting her words. A head bobbed slowly. "Mom." The voice trembled, a tiny spark battling the encroaching void. Relief flooded her, but it was short-lived as a chilling laughter echoed off the basement walls. It was high-pitched, shrill, nothing innocent about it. Sarah's eyes darted around, searching for the source, shadowy forms darting just beyond her line of sight. Ethan! Stay close. As she inched closer to the figure, the shadows coiled like serpents, whispering, taunting. She will never leave, they hissed, echoing in her mind. Mom, it hurts. Ethan's voice pierced the whispering darkness, raw with fear. A sudden panic gripped her heart as she rushed forward, almost stumbling in her haste. The room seemed to close in, the walls pulsing with malevolence. Where are you? Ethan. As she approached, she finally saw Ethan, crouched against the wall, clearly frightened. But he wasn't alone. Beside him sat a shadowy figure, a dark silhouette with hollow eyes, grinning grotesquely. It radiated a sickening desire, a hunger that sent bile creeping up in Sarah's throat. Leave him alone. She shouted, a surge of protective anger rising within her. The figure turned, its smile widening into an impossible crescent of teeth. He's mine now, it rasped, the voice echoing like a shattering glass. No! Sarah screamed, lunging forward, but the shadows lashed out, wrapping around her wrists, pulling her back. She gasped, her heart racing, eyes wild. It was like pushing against thick molasses, the effort drained her strength. Mom! Help! Ethan's cry rang in her ears, cutting through the chaos. He was reaching for her, but the figure clutched his shoulder tightly, the skin where it touched him turning dark and mottled, a mark of possession. The laughter swelled, filling the air until it was suffocating. It was no longer just taunting, it was a promise of despair. Desperation flared inside Sarah as she locked her eyes on Ethan, her heart breaking. Run! Run away! She screamed, struggling against the hold of the shadows. Ethan's eyes widened in fear, uncertainty threading between them like a lifeline. But then the shadows twisted, pulling him back into a vortex of darkness, and Sarah felt her energy fade. She staggered, feeling the weight of her own fears, the burden of the cursed legacy of Maplewood pressing upon her. The basement chilled even further, and the dim lights flickered ominously, as if mocking her resolve. She had to fight. She had to save her son. But another question burrowed into her mind: what if the prices of freedom were too high? As shadows began to swirl dangerously around her, a whisper filled the air, thick with darkness. You cannot survive what you do not understand. Sarah's heart raced, knowing time was slipping away. How could she confront something that knew her very soul? With a gasp, she fought the grip around her wrists, her voice a rasping scream in the dark. I will find you, Ethan. I promise. But would she find him before everything was consumed in the shadows? The answer lay somewhere within the darkness, just out of reach. The suffocating dark pressed in on Sarah like the cold, sinking weight of despair. Her heart thudded wildly against her ribs as she fought the shadows wrapping around her tight. With every frantic pull, the grasp of terror clutched tighter. Ethan was so close yet so impossibly far. Let him go. She screamed into the void, her voice sharp but swallowed by the encompassing fear. She felt the looming figure shift, its grin even wider, malice radiating like heat off asphalt under a summer sun. Please. Ethan squirmed, eyes wide, darting between his mother and the shadow, terror twisting his features. It throbbed in the air, this pulse of dread that expanded and contracted with every breath. Mom, I can't. The specter's fingers dug deeper into Ethan's shoulder, the mottled skin flaring a sickly purple. You cannot save him, it crooned, each word dripping with a sinister sweetness that echoed against the walls. The laughter intensified, a clashing cacophony growing louder, the sound visceral and sharp, every note slicing into her consciousness. A flash of determination rushed through Sarah. No. She wasn't losing him. Not now. Finally mustering her will, she flicked her gaze around the basement, searching for anything that could help. Old shelves lined the space, filled with dusty bottles and shattered glass. Light flickered ominously above, casting jittery shadows that seemed to dance warningly. "Ethan! Think!" she shouted, trying to focus his attention. "What do I always tell you to do when things get scary?" He blinked, confusion mingling with fear. "Mom, I'm scared." "I use your flashlight. It's in your pocket." The words tumbled out like a lifeline, and as if hearing those familiar tones broke through the terror, he fumbled, searching himself even as the figure held him back. Sarah felt the shadows tense, their grip tightening around her wrists as a warning. Time was slipping away. She needed to push through. "You can do it, Ethan." A shaky hand emerged, fumbling in his pocket until the beam from his flashlight broke the darkness. A sudden, brilliant white light cracked through the shadows like a knife, illuminating the suffocating void around them. The figure hissed, recoiling as the brightness filled the basement, revealing grotesque features, as if the darkness itself was writhing in agony. It screamed, a sound that ruptured the air, harsh and jarring. "Get away from my son!" Sarah roared, channeling every drop of her rage and love. The shadows reeled, quaking at the light. With renewed strength, she yanked against the hold on her wrists, the grip lessening as flickers of defiance shot through her body. Ethan, grasping the light, pointed it at the spectre, and as the beam struck, the shadow writhed, bursts of inky black swirling violently as cracks of light splintered from the edges. The creature's hollow eyes flared with confusion, anger turning into sheer panic. "No!" It shrieked, but before it could react, Sarah dove forward, ready to seize Ethan, but as she reached him, the shadow lunged, and the basement began to twist and glow, washing the room in a wash of blinding light and shadows mixing together in a violent whirl. Sarah could feel its power shifting, it was letting go of Ethan to focus on her. In that reckless moment, a single thought sliced through her: what if this was the price of hope? The ground beneath her trembled ominously, splitting open like a wound. Gasping, heart pounding wildly, Sarah stumbled backward as the darkness lashed out. Vigorous whispers clouded her mind again, echoing, "You cannot survive what you do not understand." You should have left. The basement shuddered, light flickering, and for one horrifying moment, she thought she might be engulfed entirely. Would she lose Ethan, too? Would she fall into the very void she fought so hard to escape? As the walls warped and changed color, she could barely see Ethan lose his grip on the flashlight, the beam fading into a pool of darkness. The shadows roared back, writhing hungrily, eager to reclaim what they thought was theirs. "Mom!" Ethan cried out, reaching for her, desperation flooding his voice. With no time left, Sarah made a desperate leap towards him. "Hold on!" she screamed, willing him to trust her just one more time. In that moment of darkness and light, of possession and freedom, Sarah steeled herself for whatever was to come, but in the back of her mind, one question loomed larger than all the terror: what happens when she tried to understand the darkness? What sort of price would she pay? The world around Sarah strained and twisted, the very fabric of reality warping as shadows twisted and howled. The last echoes of Ethan's voice lingered in the air as she lunged forward, her heart hammering against her chest, threatening to burst. She couldn't let him go. Not now. Ethan. The name tore from her throat as she fought against the chaos. The darkness surged, wrapping her in a cold embrace, trying to swallow her whole. She felt her strength wane. Where was the light? The moment hung heavy, then exploded. A deep rumble reverberated through the room, echoing like a warning bell. The ground cracked beneath her feet, jagged fissures splitting the concrete. She could see the abyss yawning, a gaping mouth hungry for her despair. Grabbing at anything, Sarah's fingers scraped the rough floor, desperately pulling herself toward the last place she'd seen Ethan. But the shadows stretched and clawed at her, inching closer, yearning for her soul. "No!" she shouted, a primal scream that shattered the air. It was a sound mingled with bravery and blinding fear, a mother's raw instinct. The basement flickered between light and darkness like a faulty light bulb, blinding her. In the intermittent gleams, her heart sank with every fleeting moment, but through the chaos, she saw Ethan small, scared, alone. He was still there. He was fighting, his hands clawing at the floor where the flashlight had fallen, desperately trying to find it again. "Ethan, grab the light!" Sarah cried, pushing her voice to break the shadows surrounding them. The air thickened with dread. He needed it now more than ever. Those shadowy tendrils lurked, whispering secrets that curled into her mind with venom, promising answers and truth if only she succumbed. The sweet temptation of letting go seeped into her resolve. But she was his mother. She had fought to keep him safe for years. She would not surrender. "Ethan! Get to me!" She shouted again, feeling the shadows recoil slightly at her voice. Her words shattered their focus. Maybe there was still hope yet. He looked up, eyes wide and glistening with tears of terror. She saw the shift in his expression, the recognition that his mother was still fighting for him. "I'm scared, Mom," he wailed, desperation cracking his fragile tone. "I know. But I need you to be brave." With those words, determination flooded her. She was done with fear. "Help me, Ethan. Use the light." The faint beam shimmered in his grasp, flickering to life between his shaking hands as if knowing this was a crucial moment. As he aimed it toward her, hope flickered anew. With sudden clarity, Sarah felt a surge of energy. Fueled by the bond between them, she summoned every ounce of herself and charged forward, the air snapping around her with electric charge. As the light broke through, the shadows reeled and shrieked, their screams echoing like a chorus of lost souls. They writhed, trying to escape the illumination. "Ethan!" Pointed at the darkness. She yelled. The shadows sputtered, drawn like moths to the flame, or was it something darker? In that instant, the basement transformed. Walls shifted, morphing from cold concrete into the walls of an ancient schoolhouse, ominous and oppressive. Memories flooded back, old reports of children who had once learned here, now shadows of regret. Was this the source? Would she find truth behind the haunted echoes? But before she could question further, the figure loomed large once more, shifting into legions of dark faces whispering her name. A cacophony of lost souls surrounded them, grasping and clawing, their pitch hungry and angry. The shadows screamed for recognition. "You should have left." The weight of their tragedy crashed into her, chilling her blood. Sarah's courage quivered, but she pushed onward. She could not yield. She wouldn't lose him. "Stay close," she urged Ethan, eyes locked on the encroaching dread. But as they pressed forward together, she could feel the pull of the darkness attempting to lure her in, invisibly tugging at her mind. There was something familiar about the sorrow behind those haunting faces. Something that felt almost welcoming. Just as the horror reached its peak, a blinding flash erupted from Ethan's flashlight. The shadows hissed in retreat, but Sarah felt a pull, a grasp from behind that threatened to shatter her resolve. "Mom!" Ethan cried, confusion flooding his voice again. With her heart racing, Sarah turned, gripping her son's hand tightly. As the darkness unleashed its fury, a chilling realization dawned on her. To understand the darkness might mean confronting the lost stories intertwined within. But what would that revelation cost? The blinding light faded, but the darkness pulsed with a feverish intensity. Would they escape this grasp? Or would they uncover something far worse? One question overshadowed the others: who was really haunting this place, and what past remained to be discovered? The air trembled around Sarah as the darkness constricted, pulsating with malevolence. Ethan's grip on her hand tightened, and she could feel his small body shaking beside her. They were entrapped in a realm suspended between familiarity and nightmare, surrounded by phantoms of the past. "What do they want?" Ethan whispered, his eyes darting among the ethereal figures that seemed to blend with the darkened walls. "I don't know," Sarah replied, her voice barely above a whisper. Desperation clawed at her chest. "But we need to keep moving. Don't look back." The flashlight wobbled in Ethan's grasp as pale faces emerged from the shadows, their features twisted in anguish. They opened their mouths to scream silent cries, voices trapped in a tormented limbo. Sarah felt a shiver slide down her spine. Each face resembled something she couldn't quite place, as if they were pieces of a long-lost memory tangled in her mind. As they inched forward, the floor beneath them shifted from the cold concrete to dusty hardwood, glowing faintly under the light. Chilling whispers echoed through the hallways, faint and broken words hung in the air, repeating, "Help us remember Mom, I don't like this place," Ethan said, his voice trembling. "What if they get us?" "You're safe with me," she stated, though her own confidence wavered. She kept her eyes forward, scanning for an exit. Every instinct screamed for them to escape, but an invisible force tugged at her, a sick allure that made her feel they were exactly where they needed to be. Suddenly, a classroom door swung open, its creaking hinges sounding like a tortured wail. An overwhelming scent of stale air and chalk dust flooded her senses. It beckoned them, drawing them closer. A surge of warmth radiated from within, contrasting the suffocating chill in the corridor. "Mom, no!" Ethan shrieked, pulling back. "Just one moment," Sarah urged. There was something about the room that connected to her, a fragment of time echoing from her childhood. She needed to know. As they stepped inside, the flashes of images assaulted her mind. Children laughed, their voices pure and innocent, sitting at tiny desks, paint-stained hands raised high in the air. But the laughter faded, replaced by sobs that echoed around her. Each child's face faded in and out of focus, morphing into the dark entities that surrounded them. "Why didn't we leave?" A voice crackled around them, chillingly familiar. Her heart raced as she recognized it, a whisper of her own regrets clawing at her sanity. "Ethan, we have to go," she yelled, panic surging like a tide. But it felt like the walls were inching closer. The shadows thickened, swirling toward them, hungry for their fears. "Why are you scared?" called a young voice from the back of the room, bright and cheerful. A girl with pigtails stood there, her smile wide and yet somehow hollow. "They just want to play." "They want to play with us," echoed another. A chorus of innocent laughter rippled through the room, but it felt like a foreboding omen rather than joy. "Get away!" Sarah shouted, pulling Ethan back as the shadows surged toward them. They flared under the flashlight, but the darkness coalesced again, whispering promises of comfort and belonging. "Mom, they're everywhere." Ethan whimpered, and the tremor in his voice broke her heart. As the whispers grew louder, Sarah felt the weight of history pressing against her reality. Names floated through her consciousness, children lost in the shuffle of time, stories never told. She had to choose: face the ghosts of her past or lose her son forever to the shadows creeping nearer. "Ethan, listen to me," she shouted, pulling him close. "We're getting out. On 3, we run back into the hallway. 1, 2." But before she could shout 3, the school bell tolled, a deep, resonating sound that shook the very air around them. The darkness swelled, the floor heaving as the walls flickered between this realm and another. "Mom, help!" The terror in Ethan's voice echoed louder than the bell. Sarah's heart ached as she realized the world around them was merging, the threads of time fraying dangerously. The shadows lunged, arms reaching for them both. In that terrifying moment of decision, memories from the basement flooded her mind, all the moments of fear, laughter, and heartache. She understood the stories entwined within the shadows. But could she confront them without losing her son? "Ethan! We need to run!" she shouted, voice breaking. As they darted toward the door, the world spun violently, and Sarah felt herself being pulled in all directions, the boundaries of their existence unraveling like a tangled thread. What would await them on the other side? And who would they confront in the dark void that followed? With every ounce of strength, they leaped into the blinding light, but the shadows throbbed behind them, promising to follow. They landed in a dimly lit hallway, breathless, the light fading behind them like a dying star. The shadows, an indistinct mass, thrashed against the threshold, howling with fury. Sarah stumbled and caught herself on the peeling yellow walls, heart racing as she pulled Ethan close. A gnawing fear clutched at her, a primal instinct screaming to run. "Where are we?" Ethan's voice trembled, echoing in the void. I think we're still in the school," she replied, scanning their surroundings. The familiar chill pressed on her from all angles, but the air was thick with a different kind of weight, as if the place itself was alive. They edged forward, moving toward a flickering fluorescent light that buzzed overhead, sending erratic shadows dancing across the floor. Each step felt heavier than the last, as if the very ground resented their presence. Sarah gripped Ethan's hand tighter, skin clammy and cold, hoping to shield him from the unseen horrors lurking just beyond their peripheral vision. The whispers returned, yet now they were sharper, more insistent. "Help us remember." The voices slithered around her, winding in and out like smoke. She couldn't understand what they sought. Memories? Closure? Or something darker? Without warning, an old wooden door creaked open at the end of the hall, drawing their attention. It was ajar, the darkness within yawning like a predator waiting to pounce. The faint aroma of dust and mildew wafted from the room, familiar yet abhorrent. "What if we go in?" Ethan asked, hesitating at the threshold. "We can't." Sarah spat, adrenaline coursing through her. "We already know it's dangerous in there." But the door called to her, an eerie chanting echoing from the unknown depths. Once again, she felt a familiar tug in her chest, a curiosity that pulled her closer. "Mom, please." Ethan's eyes mirrored her turmoil, pleading with her not to abandon him. The urgency in his voice pierced through her hesitation. The shadows murmured, shifting closer. They couldn't afford to linger. Ignoring the voice in her head, she made the split-second decision. "We need to move. Stay close." They turned to run, but the air shifted impossibly, the atmosphere growing thick with something ancient and twisted. A familiar sound echoed down the hall, children's laughter, bright and innocent at first, quickly warping into cries of anguish. She had to keep Ethan safe. Then, without warning, an overwhelming chill enveloped them. A figure materialized at the end of the corridor. It was a boy, small and ghostly pale, dressed in clothes from decades past. He stood there, a frozen expression of despair etched on his fading face. "Help us find us," he whispered, voice echoing like a thin wisp of wind. "Ethan, run!" Sarah shouted, yanking him in the opposite direction. But the shadows sprinted ahead, blocking their escape. They were trapped. The boy pointed a trembling finger at Sarah, eyes brimming with sorrow. "You need to remember before it's too late, before they take you too." The hallway began to stretch, the walls closing in, and the laughter surged, drowning out everything. Panic clawed up Sarah's throat as Ethan squirmed in her grip. "I'm scared, Mom," he yelled, eyes wild with fear. "Hold on," she cried, dragging him against the tide of shadows, feeling them scrape along her limbs, icy tendrils whispering dread-filled promises of despair. Just when she thought they would be swallowed whole, a sudden explosion of light erupted from the classroom door nearby, slicing through the darkness like a beacon. Sarah hesitated, her heart racing to the erratic drum of danger. "Is it safe?" Ethan asked, eyes wide with fear, filled with childlike hope. She couldn't tell if it was safe or another trap. Or worse, what might await if they didn't move. "Take my hand, Ethan. We have to risk it." Together, they launched toward the light, every instinct trying to pull them back. But the specters thrummed, vibrating uneasily around them, furious with each step they took. As they dove into the light, the laughter faded into silence. And then nothing. No walls, no shadows, just an endless white void. "What happened?" Sarah panted, glancing around. "Where are we?" But before Ethan could answer, the light began to flicker, revealing figures cloaked in shadow all around them. "Mom!" Ethan's voice trembled as they both turned, feeling the icy grasp of dread closing in again. the question echoed ominously in the void: had they truly escaped, or had they just entered another layer of the nightmare? And as the shadows surged forward, Sarah realized with chilling certainty that the worst was yet to come. The void twisted and swirled. Sarah felt the shadows crawl closer, their cold fingers brushing against her skin, a terrifying reminder of the danger they were in. She pressed Ethan behind her, staring defiantly into the darkness. "Stay close," she whispered, her voice barely above a trembling breath. Ethan clutched her shirt, the fabric damp and clammy in his small hands. "Mom, I don't like this place." "Neither do I," she admitted, her heart pounding against her ribs like a caged animal. The shadows shuddered, fluctuating in intensity, revealing fleeting glimpses of terrified faces, each etched with despair. Spectral whispers filled the air around them, pleading, moaning, weaving in and out of Sarah's consciousness. "Help us, find us," the words repeated like a somber chant, an endless cycle of sorrow that threatened to pull them under, and then the light flickered violently, illuminating grotesque figures dancing on the edges of their vision, twitching and writhing, shadows depicting a gruesome ballet of lost souls trapped within these walls. "Mom, what are they?" Ethan's small voice quivered with fear. "I don't know," Sarah stammered. "But we have to keep moving." They stepped forward as the shadows shrank back, an uneasy retreat like a predator feigning disinterest. But the moment they thought they had a respite, the shadows surged forward again, ice-cold fingers teasing at the edges of sanity. "Remember," a voice echoed, much clearer now. It reverberated like a shot ringing in the silence. "You must remember." Suddenly, an image flashed in Sarah's mind: a classroom, the ghost of laughter hollowing out her veins. Desks lined with the faces of children who never left. They grinned in that eerie way, frozen in a moment of time, but their eyes screamed of sorrow and longing. "Why? Why do I need to remember?" she yelled into the void, panic saturating her tone. "Because the truth hides behind the lies," it hissed. "Your memories are the key or your end." As if triggered by her words, the environment shifted violently. The white void warped, and gray walls coalesced around them as they plunged into another realm, their old school hallway, but twisted and distorted. The tiles cracked underfoot, and the once familiar smell of chalk and paper turned rancid, like something long forgotten and rotting. Ethan recoiled. "Mom, this isn't right. No matter what, do not let go of my hand," Sarah yelled, taking a step back. She glanced at the walls. They throbbed with a life of their own, curling inwards as the shadows took form, stretching across the surfaces, swirling like black ink in water. Suddenly, an apparition appeared, a teacher she recognized. Her skin was the color of ash, a heart-stopping smile plastered on her face, eyes wide and vacant. "You forgot me. You forgot all of us, did I? What do you want?" Sarah shouted, desperation creeping into her voice as Ethan whimpered beside her. "To remember and come back," the echoing voice whispered, sorrowful yet laced with an unsettling thrill. "Help us finish our stories." They were surrounded now, the walls closing in, shadows lurching closer, suffocating the light. The whispers transformed into shrieks, filling the room with chaos, chaos that demanded nothing more than their surrender. "Mom! I can't breathe!" Ethan cried, a quiver in his voice that cut through her like a knife. "Hold on. Please, stay close." She felt despair tightening its grip around her throat as the shadows surged, claws stretching to claim them, darkness begging to swallow them whole. The whispers morphed into howls of anger, clawing at her sanity like biting winds, but just when she thought they would be consumed, a sliver of light cut through the madness, revealing an open door at the far end of the hall, radiating warmth. It beckoned to her, a reckless promise of safety. "Ethan! To the door!" They sprinted, heartbeats echoing like war drums in their ears. Yet the shadows wailed, chasing them, trying to snatch them back from the brink of hope. "Run, Ethan, run!" They burst through the door, plunging into blinding light. It stung her eyes, pressing against the remnants of fear and shadows that threatened to drown them. As the door slammed shut behind them, sealing whatever horrors lurked inside, they collapsed to the floor, gasping for breath, but the moment of relief was short-lived. The light flickered ominously, and the shadows crept along the edges of their vision, whispering dark promises of what they had left behind. "Mom, what next?" Ethan's voice faltered, filled with uncertainty. The light dimmed further, and Sarah's heart raced. She felt it, an insidious pull back towards the past, towards the darkness they had tried so hard to escape. "Can we ever escape this?" she whispered, dread pooling in her gut, but as shadows coalesced around them once more, she could only wonder if the nightmare was just beginning. Ethan's grip on Sarah's hand tightened as the shadows thickened. They leaned against the wall, their breaths quick and shallow. The corridor around them morphed, its familiar tiles now a mottled gray, slick with an unexplainable dampness. Faint echoes of laughter reverberated through the air, twisting like smoke. "Mom, I don't want to go back," Ethan whimpered, his voice cracking. "Neither do I, but we need to find a way out of this nightmare," Sarah replied, desperation threading every word. But inside, she wrestled with a sickening certainty that running might not be enough this time. The light flickered again, and the temperature dropped. Tendrils of chill wrapped around them, sinking into their skin. From the darkness emerged figures, slowly solidifying shadows of children she once knew. Their ghostly eyes stared blindly, mouths open in silent cries. "Help us," they mouthed, their voices swallowed by the whispers of the void. "Ethan, don't look at them," Sarah shouted, pulling him closer, but he was captivated, entranced by the sorrowful faces. They beckoned him with bony hands. "Mom, they want us to help," he pleaded, his innocence like a beacon of light in the enveloping dread. "No. We can't stay," was all she could think to say, a frantic thought born from the primal urge to protect him. She began to back away, but the figures moved forward, the shadows writhed, pressing against them like a wave, hungry and desperate. "Remember the truth," a voice shouted from the depths, and Sarah staggered as memories surged, unbidden. Her first day in school, the smile of her best friend, faces and voices faded but persistently replaying, like a broken record mocking her. "Mom!" Ethan cried, his fear palpable. Before she could respond, the shadows lunged towards them. She spun, adrenaline coursing, and pulled Ethan after her. "Run! We have to keep moving." They tore down the hallway, but the world shifted beneath their feet. The walls closed in, pulse-like, the shadows laughing, taunting them. The laughter was wrong, empty, echoing her own fears back at her. It was as if the school itself were alive, feeding on the terror they exuded. "Faster!" she urged, glancing behind. A mass of darkness surged closer, arms stretching, threatening to draw them back into its abyss. A flash of light ahead caught her eye, a window, its shape almost graceful against the chaos. "Over there!" They sprinted, and for a fleeting moment, it felt like they were gaining ground. The desperate laughter behind them grew fainter. Sarah could almost feel the cool breeze from the window. Freedom appeared just within reach. "Mom!" Ethan called, pulling her wrist. "What if we jump? Trust me. We have to," she shouted back, pushing forward with every ounce of strength. As they neared the window, light erupted around them, cocooning them in a warm embrace, drowning out the cold whispers and shadowy forms. But just as they reached out toward the ledge, the window began to shatter, pieces exploding outward like cruel stars. Ethan screamed, pulled back by the mystical grip of the darkness. Sarah lunged, trying to reach him, panic flooding her veins like ice. "No!" They were yanked apart just as their fingertips brushed. She hit the ground hard, the world spinning, dimming. "Mom!" His voice was a distant echo, swallowed whole by the shadows. In an instant, she was consumed again, the world around her shifted back to the hall. Alone and trembling, shadows danced, their icy fingers tickling at her senses, igniting her primal fear. Desperate, she cried into the void, "You can't take me. You can't take him." The laughter returned, wicked and sinister, reverberating through the hall, pulling at the edges of her sanity. Come, remember. Sarah's heart raced. She was losing him, losing herself, and pieces of the truth were smothered in darkness. As the shadows swirled around her, she realized with dread it was never just about escaping. The door to her past creaked open behind the silhouettes, wide and inviting, offering her a glimpse of everything she had long buried, but could it also be a way out? Or would it just lead her deeper into the nightmare? Ethan? She whispered, panic creeping back. What was waiting for her on the other side? Would she have the strength to face the ghosts of her past and rescue her son? With a deep breath, she steeled herself for the choice looming ahead. The shadows trembled around Sarah, swirling with anxiety as she weighed the choice before her. Behind the door flared a light, soft, warm, inviting. She could almost hear the echoes of forgotten laughter, memories standing just beyond her reach. But could they be trusted? Could she trust herself? Ethan! She shouted, desperation clawing at her. Time stretched as she fought against the dark that threatened to consume her. The whispers intensified, pushing into her mind. Remember, find us. The sorrowful faces of the children floated around her, and she felt something shift inside, an instinct to understand. I have to go in, she murmured, the weight of her decision heavy. But it was too late. The shadows surged, pulling her back into the darkness. She could almost feel their resentment, as if they hungered for her despair. No! A fierce determination ignited within her. I will not lose him. With every ounce of strength, she charged toward the door. The shadows shrieked in fury, clawing at her skin, but she pushed through, fueled by love for Ethan. As she stepped into the blinding light, it enveloped her, melting the suffocating grip of the darkness. When the glow faded, she found herself in a classroom, her old classroom. Desks lined the walls, papers scattered everywhere, the familiar smell of chalk dust hanging in the air. Children laughed and played around her, innocent and carefree. But their eyes were dull, trapped in a sorrow that tore at her heart. Help us, remember. Her throat tightened, memories flooding back, joyous days and moments of pure laughter entwined with regret. She could hear Ethan's voice, soft yet filled with urgency, echoing from somewhere. Mom! I need you. Help me. The sound drew her forward, her heart racing as she navigated the classroom. The children turned, their lifeless expressions pleading with her to make a choice, to remember. Images flashed, sweet, innocent laughter swallowed by darkness, stories left untold. The shadows flickered ominously at the edges, waiting for her to falter. Get away from them! She shouted, finding courage as she faced the twisted forms threatening her past. But with each step, she felt the pull of childhood wonder mixed with deep-seated fear. I cannot forget, she declared fiercely, locking eyes with the children. You will not take my son. Not again. Suddenly, the room warped, spiraling into a tumult of color and sound. The darkness spun around her, clawing to drag her back into despair, but she pushed through the bright dust of shimmering memories, desperately chasing the sound of Ethan's cries. Mom! His voice pierced through the chaos, guiding her back. Please help. With her heart full of determination, she followed the sound. At the heart of the storm, she saw him, caught in a snare of shadows. Hold on, Ethan. I'm coming. Sarah lunged forward, the light radiating fiercely from her being as she strained against the dark claws. In that moment, she remembered only love could shatter the curse that bound them. Together. She shouted, reaching for him. We can break this. Ethan met her gaze, fear mingling with trust, and together, they reached for the light. The shadows shrieked, drawn back by the brightness that erupted from their joined hands. You can't have us. Sarah roared, the strength of their bond igniting like a wildfire. As waves of luminous energy surged through them, the specters recoiled, howls of terror filling the air as they dissipated into mist. The darkness thinned, revealing a shimmering exit ahead, a portal of light waiting for them both. We can do it. Ethan beamed, and together they sprinted toward the doorway. This is the moment. With one final push, they dove into the blinding light, emerging on the other side, breathless and alive. They tumbled into the familiar hallway of Maplewood Elementary, the air warm and sweet with sunshine. The panic of the relentless shadows vanished, replaced by the thrill of survival. Tears streamed down Sarah's cheeks as she enveloped Ethan in her arms. We did it, baby. We made it. But as they celebrated their victory, the whispers remained at the back of Sarah's mind, lingering reminders of the reality they had faced. Never forget, they seemed to laugh softly, echoing their names into the past. Later, as life carried on, the air was light again. The sun shone brightly, and children played freely outside. The shadows had faded, but their importance remained ensconced in Sarah's heart. She promised to commemorate each lost spirit, to tell their stories. No longer whispers in forgotten halls, but vivid memories of lives lived, weaving their plight into her own. She would protect every child, ensuring their laughter would never fade into silence again. And as she watched Ethan run toward the playful energy of his friends, her heart beat with the hope that they had a future, one free from the fear of darkness. Ethan, come here. She called. He turned, eyes bright with life, her little warrior, alive and laughing. Mom. He giggled, running into her embrace. And for Sarah, who once faced shadows, every heartbeat now blazed like a beacon of light, promising that love would always prevail. Before you hop off, listen up. This is the moment to show your support. You need to subscribe now because you don't want to miss the next exclusive stories coming your way. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm, and let's grow this community together. And hey, flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about the ending. I want to hear all your thoughts. Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. It's time to spread the word and keep the adventure alive.